Have you ever wondered, what exactly do I need to know and what exactly do I need to do in order to build as much muscle as possible? Well, luckily for you, that's exactly what I'm waffling about today. Welcome to the video, let's get into it. Let's start with the topic so dear to all of our hearts, calories. The basic principle is, if you want to build muscle, then you need to give your body enough fuel and enough food to allow it to do that. If I want to build an extension and I walk out into my shed where I keep all of my conveniently placed extension building equipment, I open up the door, look inside, and all I've got to build this extension is a couple of planks of wood and half a bag of cement. It's just not happening. And it's the same for building muscle. You need to give your body the right raw materials to enable it to go through that muscle building process. So then you might ask, well, how many calories should I actually be eating? Now, this is where most videos are going to tell you to fly off to Google, type in calorie calculator, fill in your details. That's going to spit out a number that will be your maintenance calories. Chuck 500 calories on top of that to give you a nice surplus. Bish bash bosh, there you go, done. That's not the whole picture, and there's some nuance to that needs explaining. Firstly, it's worth bearing in mind that calorie calculators aren't 100% accurate. They are an estimate based on the figures that you have inputted and some mathematical calculations. And that means there's going to be a reasonable period of adjustment and trial and error with the actual calorie number that it spits back out at you. And secondly, I've often come across this huge kind of bro sciencey misconception that you need to be in a huge surplus in order to build muscle. And that's just not the case, but it's worth paying attention to because it's an alarmingly small scope between putting on loads of muscle and becoming absolutely massive and becoming the Michelin man. Any more than a 400-500 surplus is just excessive and not necessary. And to give you some idea of whether your surplus is too big or too small, if you're gaining roughly anywhere from half a pound to a pound every couple of weeks, then you're good. If you're straying into the between a pound and 2 pound gained every few weeks, then you've gone too far and you need to dial the calories back a bit. Secondly, let's very briefly touch on protein. Keep it short and sweet. Why do you need it? You need it for a process called muscle protein synthesis, which is basically just a complicated scientific name for the process of building muscle. Again, there seems to be this myth that floats around on social media that there's a direct correlation between the amount of protein that you consume and the muscle building benefits. And it's just not really the case. When you analyze the literature, for the vast majority of natural lifters, 1 gram per pound of body weight is absolutely sufficient, and in a lot of cases, even more than sufficient. The idea that you need 1.2, 1.5, 2 grams per pound of body weight is just excessive and offers little to no benefit for the vast majority of natural lifters. Thirdly, get into the fun stuff. What should you actually be doing in the gym and what do you need to bear in mind? Now, when it comes to training, for whatever reason, there seems to be this litany of confusing and conflicting ideas and modalities that are talked about online and heavily debated. But as far as I can tell, there are two fundamental basic norms that lay the groundwork for your training, and then how you implement those norms in terms of your training modality is kind of just personal preference. And those foundations are training frequency and training intensity. In terms of training frequency, it would be optimal if you were able to train each body part twice per week. So for example, if I could only train 4 days per week, the most optimal split for me would be an upper body, lower body, upper body, lower body split. Each muscle group in my upper body gets trained twice on the 2 upper days, and the same goes for the muscles in my legs, which get trained twice on the lower days. Now, whilst that's the most optimal training frequency, there is an area of relativity and subjectivity because you might just prefer doing a bro split where you do biceps on a Monday, chest on a Tuesday, back and tris on a Thursday, and every body part is just being trained once a week rather than 2. Whatever training split you're going to be able to stick to over the long run is the one that you're going to get the most results from. So just always be thinking about whether you're actually going to be able to stick to that split for the long term. When it comes to training intensity, very basic, you need to take the vast majority of your sets to at least within 3 reps of failure and some sets to failure. That is literally it. So for the vast majority of your sets, let's say I'm doing a chest press, I'm benching 80 kilograms and I'm doing 10 reps. When you finish that 10th and final rep, if you could do another 3 before you hit absolute failure, failure being like legitimately you are shaking, quaking, struggling to get it up, near-death experience, absolute failure, if you're 3 reps away from that, then you're in a decent place. If you could probably do another 10 before you got to that point, then you need to up the weights. Number 4 is recovery. It's a bit boring, I get it. When you first start going to the gym, you have this weird anabolic superpower where you can just look at a dumbbell and put on a couple of pounds of muscle because your body is just not used to the stimulus, and it gets addictive. You just want to be in there all the time, but you need to give your body sufficient time to rest, sufficient time to recover, and sufficient time for that muscle protein synthesis process to properly take place. So factor in your rest days, don't forget to take them, and particularly if you're a beginner, don't go in too hard at the start, pushing every single set to failure, absolutely writing yourself off. It's gonna do you no favors in the long term. And finally, kind of on the same sentiment, is patience. Going to the gym and trying to build muscle is a bit of a strange thing in that the barrier to entry is actually quite low. It's not that difficult to learn the movement patterns in terms of a squat, bicep curl, tricep extensions. All of these things aren't particularly difficult movement patterns to master. The only difficult thing is doing it for long enough to actually see results. But believe me, if you stick to the principles that I've spoken about in this video, if you implement them consistently over a reasonably long period of time, you will see drastic changes in your physique, and you will get the physique that you're after. And on that rather positive note, that's all I've got for today. Like and subscribe, all that good shit. The socials are in the description or on the screen somewhere, I don't really know, to be honest. Click on them, follow me, do whatever you want, and I'll see you in the next one.